We'll see if anybody wants to show up tonight. So far, I think we have had zero luck with anybody actually joining us live.
Well, that's the way these things start.
There has got to be a first time for everything, right?
Absolutely.
We did pick up a couple subscribers, though. I will say that.
I know. How many fake accounts did you create this week?
5.
Excellent.
I did not create 5. But we are up to 5 subscribers. Or 5 subscribers. Me, you, Intelligink, and 2 others.
I didn't make my kids sign up, so I might be able to get us to 7.
All right. I got picked up a couple subscribers on my Intelligink channel this week, too. I did a new video about the whole copy-paste functionality in SharePoint and the bug that is there, which we talked about on the podcast. So if you want to go hear about that one, go check out the podcast. If you want to go watch it, go check out the Intelligink YouTube channel. And if you want to play with Microsoft Priva with us on this Thursday night, stick around here.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into Priva because I don't even know what it is other than it is in the Compliance Center. So I am looking forward to learning a lot of new things.
Guess what? We're both going to learn new things because I have turned it on and I have looked at it, but I intentionally have not done anything with it, waiting for this moment.
Well, very exciting. I think something to note for maybe somebody who comes back and watches this later and says, I want to play with Priva and turn Priva on. It doesn't seem like it's available in any of the free environments that are out there for us to play with. So we've talked about, using your Microsoft 365 developer tenant. Can't activate Priva there. You and I both tried CDX tenants. Those don't work. You're going to need like a real one with a credit card, apparently.
Yeah, that was kind of bizarre when we went in and tried to do that. And the fact that it legitimately didn't work anywhere. And I don't know, I don't know what it's doing in the background. I played with it. There is a license associated with it. So maybe I should start sharing my screen and we can just start looking at some of the documentation to start. Because I did get that far and I need to find the right scene. Oh, I still have Firefox up, or I still have Edge up somewhere. This is what happens when
this is it, huh?
Monitors. Yep. We might have to edit this part out. Post. Where did Edge go? Edge. There. Get rid of this window. There we go. Now the documentation is upright. So there is a bunch of documentation out here. The weird thing about this, Scott, I have not seen any blog posts about this or any announcements from Microsoft about Priva. And we were talking about this when I first noticed it because it was maybe a month ago or so that it just kind of popped up in my tenant and I was clicking around and discovered this. So it appears to be, and again, just based on what we've seen in the documentation, it is dealing with privacy information and private data within your tenant related to your users. Again, just looking at the description of it, privacy is top of mind, consumers concerned about how private data is handled, regulations around GDPR, around CCPA, and this appears to be a solution that helps you identify what it is you have in your tenant from a privacy perspective, which I guess Priva and privacy don't really sound the same, but the first 5 letters are the same. It just kind of lopped off the C and the Y in the name.
Well, I mean, if you use autocomplete and you could just go to Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, and you start typing Microsoft Priva, it will autofill privacy. It turns out there was an announcement about it and I'm kind of surprised about this because I missed it as well. It was officially GA'd on International Data Privacy Day, otherwise known as Data Protection Day in Europe, which is a day that's formally observed by about 51 countries per
Huh.
Wikipedia. It was announced. It appeared back at Ignite in a 2-sentence description in one of the news articles at Ignite at the time. So from 2 sentences to GA in a few months, and now here it is in all its glory. And the
I didn't
reason
even realize it GA'd. I guess I kind of thought it was still in preview, but there is no preview annotation on the documentation. So
Yeah, no. So just straight from 2 sentences to GA and out the other side. And the reason no one would have seen it is because typically those announcements go out on things like the official Microsoft 365 blog. You might see them run through on the tech community if you follow kind of the Uber RSS feed for the tech community. And it's just not there for any of those. But it was announced on the security blog, which I don't follow, like the official Microsoft security blog. But maybe I should now that I know different announcements are coming out over there as well.
I thought I followed the security blog. Maybe I just didn't see it on the security blog. I don't know. But somehow it managed to sneak past us. I also did not know there was an International Privacy Day.
Well, we don't care about things like that in the United States, but the rest of the world does. And they specifically probably care about privacy in 2 ways because Priva is 2 products. It keeps getting better and better. It is Priva Privacy Risk Management and Priva Subject Rights Requests.
Oh, see, I had not even gotten that far. You're ahead of me already reading the documentation.
Well, I mean, I read the blog, so I'm cheating.
Oh, all right. So you got the announcement up. So, yeah, this is the documentation to it. There's a nice little video here, how Priva helps your organization. But the trial, there is a trial version and there is a license associated with it. I actually don't know what the cost of it is. I have not gone that far yet. I'm still running the trial. And the trial I found through the Compliance Center. So this is the one aspect of it that I did turn on is when I first discovered this in the Compliance Center, I clicked on Priva and there's like a blue button to activate it. And as soon as I clicked activate, it said, you don't have a license for this. Go click here to start a trial. And I clicked there. It took me to like the Microsoft 365 store in my Office 365, Microsoft 365 environment, and let me sign up for the trial. So this does work with Microsoft 365 E1, E3, E5, and Microsoft 365. Oh, E3 and E5 in Microsoft 365, because there is no E1 in Microsoft 365. And E1, E3, and E5 in Office 365. So this is geared toward enterprise. Because it's only for those E-plans. It doesn't appear that you can add this on to like one of the business premium plans or anything. You do get it for 90 days for unlimited access to the risk management feature and up to 50 subject rights requests. So it also sounds like from this that once you license it, you may have to pay extra based on those subject right requests.
You do. So I recommend that you turn this off as soon as we're done with it. And you, or maybe we don't even do a subject's right request if it doesn't have a trial. Priva privacy management for risk through Priva, otherwise known as Priva Privacy Risk Management, because this is like a marketer's dream here. Whoever came up with this stuff, that is $5 per user per month. So that is a per user entitlement that comes along the way. So when you sign up for your trial, that was your 90-day trial for Priva privacy risk management, the kind of per user entitlement.
Okay.
Privacy management subject rights request is $199.80 per user per year US. And you can buy those in batches of 1 request, 10 requests, or 100 requests, should you choose to go about it that way. And the difference between them is that $5 per user per month entitlement is going to kind of act as your gateway to visibility into personal data that exists within your Microsoft 365 tenancy. So that would be personal data within Exchange Online, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, and Teams, because lots of that is driven out of those underlying workloads anyway. Comes along with all the privacy templates, how to kind of set up your environment for data minimization, avoid data overexposure, data transfers, all those kinds of things. And then it includes the components to engage with your quote unquote information workers from within the productivity suite that they use and drive behavioral change. So I take that to mean, you go to send an email and that email might pop something up and say, hey, this personal data has been within your environment for 180 days. And therefore, we think it's pretty old and you're probably out of compliance. Maybe let's not send that email and get rid of it. Maybe like an IRM label does.
Okay.
And kind of throwing things up that way. Subject right requests is a service that allows you to automate your response to subject right requests and manage them at scale. Who knows what that means?
So
it allows you to use Power Automate templates with existing business processes, which also requires the appropriate license for Power Automate. You get no programmatic access to APIs unless you're paying for this subject rights request, which I don't quite understand because it's a per user per year entitlement. It's not like something that's just activated in your tenancy, I guess. And then you can securely collaborate with other stakeholders through Teams, which also, of course, requires the license for Teams. So now you understand why it requires everything, because you need all the underlying workloads to get at it.
So subject right request, my initial thought would be this is I think this is tied to GDPR. I don't know if CCPA has this, but it's that what is all the information you have stored about me from employees' perspective? I believe GDPR requires that you, or maybe not even employees, but a person can come to you and say, what information do you have about me? And you have to deliver, this is all the information we have stored. That was what my thought was the subject right request is.
It sounds that way, yeah, from all the documentation. So it's about kind of being able to aggregate that data, review it, produce reports on top of it, all those kinds of things. So you have a policy engine on one side, which can drive user behavior within the tooling. So let me create a rule that personal data shouldn't exist in my environment for more than N days. And if someone tries to do something with that data after N days, throw up a prompt on the screen and say, hey, do you really want to do this? Or, maybe deny that request along the way. So having policy-driven enforcement for business rules around the retention of personal data in your environment, and then having the subject rights requests to be able to go in and kind of automate that process end to end. So maybe you want to do things like automated searches. You want to be able to produce reports about the findings in your environment, things like that. You'll need that additional licensing to make things work.
Got it. So yeah, here's a diagram where it is. That's the right to access, the right of data portability, right to be forgotten. And it looks like this Priva rights request then would go in, gather that data. So this is interesting too. Detect and flag conflicts, legal holds, confidential information, retention policies, multiple personnel data. Collaborate over Teams. I don't know what you'd collaborate with on a subject right request over Teams. Maybe those conflicts?
The reporting.
You just had to get Teams in here somewhere. Like, Teams naturally has to be a part of everything you do now, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's why we had to have that collaboration in there. Built-in review, annotate, redacted content. I wonder if there's redaction in here. Or is this if I have redacted content in my content somewhere? And then securely deliver in a defensible process. Huh. Yeah, I'm going to have...
Let's go play with it.
Should we go start looking at this? So we're going to risk this because, like you said, we were unable to get this running in any environment that we tried. I could have gone and stood up like a trial environment. Maybe this would have worked. But there wouldn't have been any data in there, right? Because the whole point of Priva is that it's looking for data. So we're going to do this in my production tenant. And I'm going to be very careful to try to click on only things that I want people to see while dealing with privacy and data around people.
I think it's more the reports that it brings up. So if you have to yank the plug, you like yank the plug.
Yeah.
And we'll go private, and you can, we don't have to be live, and then you can edit the video for later.
Figure it out. So it is in the compliance center. So here we are. We're over in my compliance center. I already went in and assigned licenses. So like you said, it is per user. I have all my trial licenses. I went in and assigned all of those, and then went over to compliance.microsoft.com. And down here at the bottom, we have our Priva stuff. So there's the Priva privacy risk management that is cut off because the title's too long and I can't resize the flyout. And I had very little sleep last night, Scott. I might be a little...
I mean, it's got an alt tag on it. Don't ask for more than that.
It does. I can hover over it and see. And I mean, it has most of the characters. And then here's those subject right requests. So this is what I did already. Is the first thing I did, and I can kind of talk through this since we can't really show it, is I expanded out Priva privacy risk management and went to overview. You're going to see data in mine, in theory, once it loads. Originally, what I had here was just a big blue box that kind of gave a little bit of a Priva overview. And then kind of right in the center was that activate. So I did have to activate it. And then it took a couple days before I started seeing stuff, because you'll notice it is finding items with personal data. I have 220 new items in the last 7 days. I have content items with the most personal data. Not really sure what that is. But all of this has just started showing up automatically. So I have done nothing to my Priva privacy risk management environment yet, other than just activating it.
Well, you did that, and you assigned the licensing.
And I assigned the license. So assign the license, activate, assign the license. Those two things in some order.
Yeah. Order of operations there. And I think that's where the developer tenants and the CDX tenants break down. Is the activation breaks, but you can still go assign the licensing. But there's some kind of back-end tenant-driven process that's running in the background that never gets activated.
Yeah. And who knows what it is or why, but that is what we found. I was able to go get the trial licenses. I was able to add the trial licenses. I was able to assign the trial licenses. But every time I clicked activate, it kept telling me that I didn't have the trial licenses. So I don't know why. I don't know what's going on. But this main thing just looks like it's essentially an overview of scanning for personal data. So kind of like we said, up at the top, it has 220 new items. It has a nice button to go buy subject right requests for that $200 per user per year and 80 cents. 80 cents makes me laugh. Must have been some percent margin that they were going for.
Very dialed in. Yeah. We don't want to overcharge, but you don't want to undercharge either. Yeah. Got to get your cogs right on that.
So content items with the most personal data, we'll maybe have to go look at some of this. See what we can pull up in there. Personal data found in the organization. there's a lot of data in my organization for not having like me and a couple of contractors. That's a lot of personal data.
Well,
63,000 data. Is that items? Is that like a email or a file? Or is that occurrences of personal data where I could have like 10 occurrences in a single email?
I imagine that's occurrences. Like maybe what we should do is go look at policies, and hopefully that provides some insight on what's going on there. But if you think about the broad definition of personal data, if I provide you my phone number, so I send you an email and my signature contains my home phone number in it, like I put home or M for mobile, that's personal data. It's associated with me. So in some organizations, under existing privacy rules, you have to manage that data in certain ways. Like just because I've told you my mobile phone number doesn't mean that you should take that message and forward it on to the entire world. Like you shouldn't go blast it out on Twitter and Snapstagram and all those things. So if you think about all your daily interactions that you have with people in general, we tend to overshare a lot of personal data, and the opportunities for that kind of data to leak is pretty high. I'm doing a support ticket with you and I say, hey, Ben, I'm one of your customers and I provide you my home IP address because I'm having trouble accessing my server when I'm at home. That's data that's associated with me.
Right.
So depending on policies and how things are flagged, it could feel like it's an overzealous thing. Like, oh my gosh, how do I have so much? But I think a little bit of it is just kind of recognizing what is considered private and personal data in our society today, not only within the United States, but within the rest of the world as well.
Yeah, and that's what I was curious if it's occurrences. But I do have my office phone number, my cell phone number. I'm assuming my email address. I don't know if it even looks at like links to Twitter and LinkedIn. How much of that is considered private, but if it is occurrences, like every email I send could easily get flagged with probably at least 3 between email address and 2 phone numbers.
Yep. Mine's very much the same way. So I think we're all pretty guilty of that one.
So,
or, you're working with somebody and you have to send them your address. Like if it's a work address, like it'd be interesting to see what the policy engine looks like. Like, is there ways to disambiguate some of those things? But we should take a look.
We should. We're gonna have to go in. You can see where I turned it on, and then I started jumping up like in massive increments. I wonder if this is cumulative or if this is how much is actually found per day. I would assume this would be cumulative, but this drop is kind of interesting here.
I mean, based on the X and Y axis, you'd think it's per day.
Yeah. All right. So just some basic reports there. Do you want to go in and look at one of these policies, data profiles, see what else is in this menu?
Yeah, let's go dig into policy.
All right. I clicked on data profile. We'll go into policies. So privacy management policies. There are 3
so
policies.
It's interesting that they're all on by default, but there's a testing mode.
And I have a little blue bubble. This is like the new Clippy. Data overexposure policy. Detect personal data that may be overexposed and prompt users to secure it. So that's this first one. This default data minimization is minimize private information that's shared, probably. Data transfer policy. Identify and limit transfers of personal data across regional borders or between departments in your organization. Huh. So
all the things that you might that you might not think about as private data, but yeah, they're very much they're there. And it's interesting. Lots of this stuff is top of mind for me because we're getting into a couple months into the new year at Microsoft, and we all go through regular training
Okay.
around security, privacy, compliance, accessibility. Like there's a couple core things that we all do as an organization. And I just had to do my privacy training yesterday and today. So
Oh,
it's
this is
it's right there in my head. All those things that we collect about others that maybe we're not supposed to share along the way.
So do you have, I don't know how much you can talk about. Do you have some of that where like you're not allowed to share or you shouldn't be sharing certain personal data across? Because obviously Microsoft, global organization, offices all over the world. Is there anything that you ran across? Like the whole not sharing across regional borders, or I mean you guys probably have hundreds, if not thousands of departments. Things from that, like does that come up in your privacy training?
Yeah, there's things like that. I think the privacy training is a little more generic. When you get into some of the other parts of our organization, so maybe you're in support or you deal with like incident management, things like that. There are definitely walls that exist.
Got it.
So you work with a support agent, and you open a support request. That support agent, they know your email address, they know your phone number, they know all the details that you've shared with them. Like
Right.
you open an Azure ticket, they have to know what your subscription ID is and the resource that you're talking about, things like that. If that gets escalated to me in engineering, I might never know who the customer is. I'll just know that there's a resource, and we'll quite often refer to the customer as just the customer,
Got
and
it.
you might not know what's going on there because you don't want to overexpose or have that kind of bleed across of personally identifiable information along the way. Like
Interesting.
it is a big no-no. So we definitely watch out for it.
Huh. All right. And then detect personal data and prompt users to remove it. Oh, I started at the bottom. Data overexposure was sharing too much or too frequently. Data transfers was who are you sending it to? Default minimization is maybe not putting quite so much personal information in anything. So it's interesting that this is on. I've had this on now for maybe a week or two. And I talked about my email signature. I have not seen anything in my email or any prompts or anything around data minimization and everything I've done so far.
So go ahead and click into that policy.
Should we go look at what this one does?
Yeah, from some of the screenshots in the documentation, if this follows along, like it might be 180-ish days before it's looking for some of that. So let's go edit the policy up in the upper
data.
Right, left there. So it's got a default template.
Description. So this is, this is very similar to DLP stuff. It looks like it's probably using a lot of the same rules as your DLP. Your sensitive information types. Like these are sensitive information types configured kind of across the whole compliance center.
Mm-hmm.
So physical address, these are, what are these? These are all of these. So a full name and a physical address. I do not, that is one thing I don't put in. I don't know that I've ever put that in an email, is that physical address. So this is definitely one that wouldn't get flagged.
You might be surprised. Somebody sends you an invoice and it comes over email and it has an address in it.
That's true.
Right. You have a PDF or something like that just comes through because that's the natural way, right? We cut a PO. What's the PO number? And ultimately that PO number has to associate back to some physical thing in the real world.
Invoice 'tis true. So my invoicing goes out through a third-party software that I use. So I send very few invoices via PDF. And I don't know that I've sent any. It would be interesting to see if one of these flags coming up. Well, I think I did just recently send one. Anyways,
I like how quickly you went from "I never do that" to "I might have just done that."
well, there's one client that I send PDF invoices to, but I don't know that I have any physical addresses on there. So that is
It is
all
very
of
much
these.
like the DLP rules engine,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
leveraging those built-in uh, and kind of stock information types that are available to you.
So the other one, full names, medical terms. Yeah, definitely don't send these. These, let's go look. Australia, DEA numbers, EU.
That is an everything in the kitchen sink default rule right there.
Yeah,
Normally,
it
when you
is.
build those out, you would just say, "Oh, I'm in the US," or "I'm just in Japan," or "I'm just in Australia," and they just said, "Oh, you're in everything. Go."
I guess if you're going to spin it up by default, it's probably easier than determining what country I'm in and customizing it based on country.
Yeah. So, do a couple favors for me. Where you've got the drop downs for the confidence level, you've got the little info button
Oh,
there.
yep.
What's it saying about those confidence levels? Like, is it telling you the difference between medium, low, high?
Nope. It just
Oh,
says
well, that's super helpful. Looks like you can
medium is
do
recommended.
so it looks like you can do instance counts. So if I see n instances of this sensitive information type, go ahead and flag it, and you have an upper and a lower bound, and then
Yep.
you can just delete that, or you can add your own custom rule. It's pretty
It's
straightforward.
definitely DLP. Like DLP has this because maybe to your point, I'm dealing with customers and I frequently maybe send like a routing number for direct deposit or something like that. And with DLP, because you're looking at more like encryption, it's maybe you're looking for data exfiltration. You're like, if somebody sends a whole bunch of routing numbers or a whole bunch of credit card numbers, we want to flag it. So this instant count, I feel like, is a product of the DLP engine because really, if you're trying to do data privacy, you're always going to want this set to 1, I would think, because you want to flag anything that's considered private information.
Yeah. So I'm trying to go through the documentation kind of while you're clicking around there too, and they never explain what any of that is. So the whole manage policies page is 3 paragraphs. The create
Really?
policies page tells you, so I want to learn about settings for data minimization. It's 2 paragraphs. And yeah, it gives you some ideas of like what the rule engine is, but I can't find anything that says, here's what high, medium, low confidence means within the context of this engine.
I wonder. So I've seen some of this with some of the compliance stuff and some of the risky behaviors. This is straying a little bit, but like risky users and risky sign-ins in Azure AD, there it's something similar. You can define high, medium, and low, but they don't really ever tell you what that is. I wonder if some of this high, medium, low in some of these situations is them intentionally masking what the AI is doing. Because this to me very much feels like some type of AI or machine learning where it's processing data, looking for these information types, and it's like, this is matching regular expressions, keywords, words that are certain distances apart from each other, all of those things you can do when you define a sensitive information type. And if you knew, well, one, AI could change based on how confident is it based on these rules. But two, if you knew some of that stuff, I feel like it would also make it easier to bypass protections that are put in place. Because if I know what those levels are and how those levels are determined, I might be able to figure out how to bypass those.
Yeah, some of it probably only matters if it's surfaced to the user, but I would think as somebody who configures it, Typically a confidence score, if you're training a new model for something, you're probably going to go with like a standard like 0 to 100 score.
Yep.
And within 0 to 100, if you're going to have a low, medium, high, what are those boundaries?
Got it.
Is low 0 to 33? Is medium 33 to 66 or 34 to 66, and is high 67 to 100?
Got it. So not necessarily.
I don't know. So unless it exposes something, like it would have to expose something to you to be, I think, useful. Like I would want to know when I'm saying, hey, look at a US or UK passport number for medium confidence. And maybe it does tell you like, hey, based on the number of passports that we found in your system, this is how we derive medium confidence later. It shows you like an instance count or something like that. But it's kind of hard to say. Like, why would you ever go for high confidence over low confidence without knowing what confidence meant in context?
So you're not necessarily looking for how confidence is determined, but what are those numeric ranges?
Oh, well, I think you want to understand, like, I'd be interested in understanding how the engine works, because every organization's a little bit different. And, even like organizationally, you might say, I'm in a country that has to adhere to data privacy law X, Y, or Z. And absolutely, you're going to adhere to that law, but does you selecting low confidence in your engine, does that make it so you're not adhering to that law? Or, on the flip side, if, you always knew that low confidence was adhering to the law, but you wanted to be harder than that, like maybe you make everything high. I don't know. It's very kind of obtuse.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I can look at this. I can't add additional conditions. So I can go modify existing conditions, but I can't add any new ones.
Well, I think you're in a default rule too. So you're in the default data minimization rule. Maybe if we go and create a new one, you'd have that opportunity.
And have more. I can add content contains to a condition. I just can't, or maybe there's only 3 conditions you can add. I don't know. Okay, so this is where you define what data you're looking for.
It's all very opaque.
Yes. Users and groups, this is very much like DLP. Who is covered by this policy? I'm going to assume most of the time it's maybe going to be everybody. Maybe if you're looking for certain departments that aren't allowed to send, kind of to your point. If you're service desk, you don't want them sending sensitive information to the rest of the organization. I suppose you could go in and set up one of these data minimizations to scope it to just your help desk or just your service desk, because you want different rules in terms of what they're allowed to send.
Yeah. Yep. Makes sense.
Next, Exchange email, fair, OneDrive accounts, Teams chat and channel messages, SharePoint sites, and then all SharePoint. This one's interesting. Exchange, I guess, mailboxes. So include users' email attachments sent or received by Exchange mailboxes. DLP policies allow you to specify or exclude mailboxes.
And this doesn't. This is an all or nothing proposition.
Right, which you could argue that users and groups is going to choose a mailbox by default. But I wonder what happens if you have shared mailboxes. Like if you have a support desk mailbox, does that get included in emails? Because that's, I guess you could say it's a user. It's an unlicensed. It shows up as an unlicensed user. But this does not let you fine tune your mailboxes, only your SharePoint sites. And it doesn't let you fine tune OneDrive accounts. That's another one you can fine tune in DLP policies. So, includes all of those. Wonder if Power BI will come too. Power BI is another one you now have in DLP. Conditions. So this gets into what you had started talking about. Trying to think, what would this 30, 60, 90, 120 days? So this is going to look for content that is old that has certain personal information in it.
Well, it's So
it's not looking for recent. It has to be at least 30 days old since that email was written, since the document was updated. So it's not
and
just that
if you think about it in that support context, you know, I've got a long-running email thread with a customer today, and then that customer doesn't have any problems for 60 days, and they come back later, and I want to like resurface an old thread or go bring something over and attach it. That might not be the right thing to do, because who knows what's changed at my customer? Like, am I still talking to the same person?
Right. And I wonder, we'll go look at some of the outcomes and alerts to that point, as well as not retaining it. Even I think about it from like a security vulnerability standpoint. I was working on a case where I think we talked about it on the podcast. A company had a security breach. Somebody got into their file server. Somebody very easily could have gotten into their SharePoint server and exfiltrated a bunch of data. Some of that data actually went back. We were trying to help them figure out what got exfiltrated, what type of data was there. Some of that data went back like 15 years, and it contained private information. Some of those types of data that were monitored that literally just sat idle. They probably did not need it anymore. There was no reason it had to be kept around. I wonder if this could even help with something like that. Like, here's some private information. It's more than 120 days old. Can we actually start cleaning up some of this data so that when a scenario like that arises, we're not having to deal with private data going back 15 years?
Yeah, which is totally valid.
All right, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Define outcomes.
Let's start nexting faster through this.
Okay, define outcomes. Send a notification email when a policy match occurs. Email notifications daily, weekly, Monday. URL to privacy training. Scott, go take that privacy training.
That's right. That's a mandatory field too.
So this is probably sending an email to the person that broke it. This doesn't appear to be like alerting administration. This is like, go tell Scott violated it. Go tell him to go do something about it.
Yeah.
Alerts. Create alerts on policy match or when a threshold, certain time frame, multiple users. So this is another one. This is probably surfacing this alert in Security Center, Compliance Center, maybe shoving it over to Microsoft Defender for cloud apps if you have that. I'm assuming there's probably ways you could end up getting this over into Sentinel to log analytics.
I'd love to tell you about it, but it's not documented, so who knows? Sky's the limit.
I should turn this on and see what we can do. But again, setting threshold, so maybe you don't want it every single time. You only want it when multiple.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave that.
All the documentation says is alerts. Decide the frequency of alerts to admins when a policy match is found. Yeah, that's great.
And then you can run it in test mode or not. Insights generated while in test mode. Toggle it to on. So I'm assuming by default it is live, and if you want it in test mode, you need to actually put it to test mode. Otherwise, it's
it looks like those three default policies: data minimization, data overexposure, and I forgot what the third one is.
Here, I can cancel out of this. Yep.
Those were all on by default, but you could also go look at going in and just creating a brand new policy from scratch.
Except that my policies disappeared when I canceled. Oh, I'm in data minimization.
Yeah, you got to go back a level.
I've got to go up to Those three.
Use the
Okay.
breadcrumbs.
Settings. We can anonymize data. Notifications. Here's Teams collaboration. Should we flip through these a minute? Notification emails, fine. Teams collaboration. So this is that loop that we were looking at earlier. If you want to enable Teams collaboration around those subject right requests, data matching. This one I don't know. Sensitive information types, I'm going to assume this doesn't pull in the DLP sensitive information types. We might have to spend another day going through some of this. Data retention periods. How long do you want to retain it for? Data review tags. Mark files retrieved in subject right. So this looks to be a lot of subject right request stuff. This is subject right request data retention. Tags are subject right request. Data matching. I'm surprised there's nothing here. I would expect this to show all the DLP stuff, or have something there based on what we saw in the policy.
Well, but I think the label in there is telling you that it's giving you the opportunity to create your own unique types that exist outside of those other ones. So you kind of had that bit. So you had that big broad set that was available within like the default policy, which lined up very well with like sensitive information types. But this is saying, hey, let's go above and beyond that.
Right. Do you want to create a policy or assume that this is going to be very similar to what we just edited, maybe with a couple things?
I would assume it's very similar from the start.
Let me just click. So you can start with those templates or create a custom one. Let me look. So yeah, you're going to get the same things, which
ultimately you're going to have to pick one anyway.
Right. Like, I don't really know what purpose a custom one chooses because immediately now I'm in.
Well, it gives you the opportunity to choose one of the three that you already skipped.
Yeah. The only thing I could think is maybe if you start with a template, if maybe it automatically fills out, classification. Like maybe it automatically fills out one of these. I don't know. But you do have to choose one of those three policy templates, and that is going to be very much what we had earlier. So the only other thing we haven't looked at, data profile. So this is telling me, this is actually telling me what it's found a little bit more. Personal data types. I actually have almost the same amount. SharePoint, Exchange, top personal data types. If we go dig through.
This is probably where you're going to have to start blurring things.
Yeah. Oh, look, we're still safe.
What is a lab test term? Diseases. How many times have you talked about COVID in the past 2 years?
I don't know. I really want to click into one of these.
You kind of should.
Diseases. Where should I go?
I'm the only one watching, so you can just pull this down right after and pretend it never existed.
Oh.
Aw. You're not an Uber admin within your org.
Well, I'm a global admin. I apparently need to go. I have seen this. Have you seen this some in the Compliance Center where global admins by default don't have all the compliance permissions?
Yep. Yeah, you have to go assign yourself. You have the ability to assign yourself the rights to become a reader or a viewer or things like that. So yeah.
Let me go look at just a minute. I think I'm pretty safe going. If I don't dig around too much in Azure. If I go into PIM, what were those roles?
Content Explorer List Viewer and Content Explorer Content Viewer.
Oh no, I don't want my roles. I always do that. I want to... You know what? I bet I can't even do it in here. I bet those are not Azure AD.
Well, they're probably Compliance Center roles.
Yep, they're not. I don't have any of those content ones. Sorry, we're not going to be able to do that today. But I am curious. But this looks like I should be able to go drill through this and actually view like what are each one of these files. If I wanted to go in and
Mhm.
explore which email, which file, which Teams conversation included a physical address, I could go in and do that. That's going to be Data Explorer.
Hey, look, you do all your business in the US.
Yeah, imagine that. 90,000. This is probably, that's by data type. I wonder if this just changes that top level. Nope, same thing. So all of those explorers start at that same level in terms of drilling through that data. Interesting. Guess I'll have to go give myself permissions. Privacy right requests.
Oh,
Another one. Contact your global
your
admin.
global admin.
Privacy rights role. So I cannot go do a subject rights request. Maybe these will have to be. This is what happens when we dive through this, right? We realize we don't have rights. I'll have to go assign myself some rights, and we can do like a part 2.
You don't have rights to create rights requests. So yeah, it all makes sense. But that probably cuts it a little bit short because that will take 30 minutes, if not more, to activate.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to go. So we're not going to try to do that live, but I can go. I didn't look at this. I wonder if this explores the same thing. Items with the most. Ooh, this might have to be blurred out. Huh. I am not going to click on these. This is actually pretty safe. You can see I emailed my 2019 taxes and 1099s. And I did some work with Gimel a while back, but by and large, Cinex.
I'm more interested in the email 10 whole minutes. Like you had a subject on an email, 10 whole minutes.
That one I can probably click into. Should I click into that one and see what it is? Plain text. Unable to show preview of 10 whole minutes.
Makes
Details.
complete sense.
Yeah. This is one of my diseases. Apparently, for 10 whole minutes, I was on some type of medication with diseases. You know what I bet this is, Scott? I have a guess. I'm going to guess this is spam related to some medication to help with a certain disease that I should call my doctor if my disease or symptoms last longer than 4 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, take the blue pill.
Yes. The Restless Billionaire. These are emails I didn't even know I got.
They're probably all sitting in your junk folder.
Probably.
So you're right. Maybe you do want that filter to say, hey, don't count all these things as they come in.
Yeah. But that is a different Explorer. Like, even though I can't go through the data profile and view it, it's interesting that I can go view a summary and view some of the previews here. Users with the most matched policies.
Well, you haven't had to send any of those, so you don't have to worry too much about
items
that
with
one.
the most data subject content. I won't dive into all those. But it does let you do some different exploration here. 221. Yeah, this is going to show me that same thing. I'm not going to hang out there just in case there is something. The one was safe. We know that these are all going to be that similar exploratory where it looks like instead of pulling up items by category, it pulls them up more based on date range. Just recent items. Let's go see what popped up in the last 7 days or so.
Mm-hmm.
So that looks like probably a pretty good summary of Priva without going through and assigning myself a bunch of permissions.
It's a decent start.
We got there. Maybe we'll do a part 2.
Just don't click those buttons at the top. Buy it now. Buy it. Did you know you're using a trial? Would you like to spend more money?
Always.
There's a dark pattern.
Yeah, we'll have to go in and do one of those before my trials run out because I do have those 50 subject requests. So I could go at least set one up. I wouldn't want to necessarily go see what data it pulled, but we could dive into some of that if I went and set up some additional permissions. That was interesting, Scott.
Maybe for you. It's I don't know. I don't deal with a lot of Microsoft 365 customers these days. So I can certainly see the value in having that, like where I still managing those kinds of environments. It seems like one of those things that could potentially be super heavy-handed as well. Depending on the part of the world you're in, that might be a requirement just from a legal CYA kind of standpoint. And certainly like parts of the US too. There's states like Florida that have, much more detailed privacy laws than someplace like Florida.
You mean California versus Florida?
Yes, yeah, California versus Florida. Like having like the Data Protection Act in California, is from the U.S. side of things, like our version of the GDPR, but it only exists in one state. So, if you're worried about that on that side, like there's probably some interesting things here for you.
Yeah. Well, and even not necessarily from those laws, but I've had some customers ask with Microsoft 365, like reporting on DLP. And I get this isn't DLP, but they've come and said, we just want to know what matches we have. We don't necessarily care about blocking sharing emails or encrypting them. They want to do a little bit more investigatory work with DLP and sensitive information that's being shared. This isn't going to like say what private information is shared, but just giving you an overall snapshot of what are people putting into my environment. There's really, up until this, there wasn't really a good way to report on kind of what sensitive information do I have environment-wide. Because DLP was focused more on sharing it, not reporting on what's there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you went in and created some of these policies and narrowed down that scope, you could easily see how many social security numbers do I have in these environments or in my email or in SharePoint or something like that.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting service too. It seems to be one of the tenant level services where you don't need a per user license for everyone. So you could look at your like risk management organization, and maybe they're the ones who handle kind of privacy and risk within your org. Those are the only users that would need licenses to get into something like this. Like they're the ones who need to view the insights, but the coverage of the data and the scanning and kind of the back end that's surfacing those scoring mechanisms around, low, medium, high confidence, all those kinds of things, that's just built in at the tenant level. So you really only need licensing around the subject's rights requests, and how many of those you want to process, and then the per user licensing to get in and manage the service, view the data within the service. But, maybe that's you as the admin of the organization. But if I'm just a cog in the machine, then I don't need that per user license.
Got it. So you only need a license if you're going to go into the compliance center and look at the data.
Yeah, I pulled up the licensing kind of deep dive, and it explicitly calls out that Priva solutions are built into the compliance center, and they are enabled at the tenant level for all users within the tenant. And they recommend that licenses be acquired for any user that you intend to benefit from and protect with the service. But like that kind of implies like, hey, if you're going to scan everything, you should license everything, but it's not explicitly spelled out.
Huh.
It's very weird, because then it dives into the whole bullets around what are the differences between privacy management risk and privacy management subjects rights requests. because the risk one is the service that again allows you to go get that visibility into things and kind of engage with users. So you maybe need to be careful with it. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, nor am I a licensing expert, but as with most things Microsoft licensing, here's another confusing one.
Well, and what gets confusing? Like, you used to be able to look at licenses in the website, like that have tables of licenses and what features are there. Now, especially for compliance, for detailed licensing guidance, see this, and you might expect it to go to a page. Oh, this one did go to a page. Well, it doesn't, sort of goes to a page, but it doesn't have the breakout. More and more now, I'm clicking on view the detailed licensing, and it like pops up a like 5-page PDF with all the different variations of licenses that get you a slew of different features.
Yeah, I wonder if Priva is covered in the excellent Aaron Dinage's Microsoft 365
Should we go
licensing
look at
maps.
that in a minute?
If nobody's ever seen this, go to m365maps.com. So Aaron is, I don't know if I believe he's still a Microsoft
I think
employee.
he's still Microsoft.
Yeah. So he's based out of Australia, super sharp, like really good at what he does. And he created these really nice views, like you've got up right now, the feature matrix, so you can dial into that feature matrix and say, I'm interested in just Office 365 Enterprise E1, E3, E5, and you can really knock it down to like, what are the check marks that are covered across all these different SKUs?
I could probably use this search box instead of like find on this page.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest things to do is go like select none and then pick like Office 365 Enterprise E5. And that'll give you everything in the E5, but I don't
Well, but this should give me everything, right? Like if I would go do Priva, in theory, if it was in any of them, it should pop up.
But Priva's an add-on, so it might not be in his list. I was just kind of trying to see. I looked
for back button does not work. Subject. I love that there's product name changes in here too.
Yeah, because that never happens.
No.
Yeah, no, I just searched the GitHub repo and Priva's not mentioned in there yet. So
even some
maybe
of the comparisons.
Aaron will get on that.
Yeah, we should go tell him to update it.
He might not follow the security blog. He might not know it exists.
Like these diagrams too, since we're on the subject, are really nifty in terms of there's a little formatting, something or other going on there.
They're super helpful if you have to have conversations with customers about these kinds of things, particularly like cross SKU bleed and functionality bleed across SKUs. Yeah. He's been doing this for a while. I remember when he started these and they were just PDFs, and even then they were super helpful. So having them kind of dynamic like this where you can just dial them in is just awesome functionality.
Yep. Let me go pull up. Like these are the ones that I love, where you can see like the Microsoft 365 E5 has everything. And if you were just going to do like Office 365 and EMS E5, this is some of the stuff you miss. And just being able to give this to clients too, because I've had that. They're like, well, I don't need Windows Enterprise E5. So why would I want to do Microsoft 365 E5 when I can do EMS and Office 365? Well, you get all of this other stuff around Defender for Endpoint with that Windows license. So yeah, being able to kind of break this out and look at all of these different features and then click on it, and he has it linked to the docs. Like, what exactly is that feature? So you can go read about it. Yeah, I forgot to go look at his for Priva, but these bonus content at the end, super helpful.
Yeah, there you go. For anyone who made it this far.
Yeah. made it through us digging through Priva for an hour. All right. Well, I'm going to go get a snack and head to bed.
Sounds like a plan.
And I will let you do the same. So we will go ahead, sign off of this video. And Scott, I came up with Priva, so it is your turn to come up with the next YouTube video for the next time we do this.
I might need your help for our next one. I had somebody ask me a really interesting question on Twitter today about the way cloud PCs potentially worked and filtered traffic versus just a regular PC.
Saw that. Yes.
And I might be fun to dig into.
We should. Well, maybe we'll make that our next topic. So, but for now, go enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll talk to you tomorrow when we record the podcast.
Indeed. It's going to be a long way off. Thanks, Ben.